Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome to Muslim Network TV Canada. Today, Youth Edition. This is your host, Brother Muhammad Maxwell Hassan, here talking about, the end of Ramadan. I can't believe it, subhanAllah. Just one day. I remember as if it was yesterday when Ramadan first started and everyone was getting excited, but just as quickly as it came, it's gone just like that. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept all of our efforts, accept all our good deeds, carry on the good deeds until throughout the whole year. But I'm sure, as you can imagine nowadays, especially with this whole COVID-19 pandemic, energy is at an all-time low. For many folks, it's taking its toll on so many. And on top of that, with fasting, although this is a righteous and noble endeavor that we're doing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it takes a toll on us. And we want to see how we can kind of pick ourselves up and re-energize ourselves, so that way when we continue on throughout the year, especially in this pandemic, in this lockdown situation, how can we move forward with our lives? And with us here today, mashallah, we got two very special co-guests here to shed light on this topic. We have Sister Zaina Hamdona. She's a Palestinian, Canadian MSc turned PhD student at the University of Toronto, focusing on studying the health of racialized communities in Canada, in addition to social and political science. Sister Zaina is a community-focused researcher driven by policy to practice implementation, and is involved with several community organizations to support social development. Looking forward to hearing your insights, Sister Zaina. And also with us here today, we got an OG, as they say, one of the persons who, one of the first guests right here on the show, mashallah, Brother Yusuf Helmi. Yeah, Helmi, he is 23, mashallah, Mississauga native, and he co-founded MAA. What's MAA? Muslim Athletic Association, with 6 other individuals. And through this vehicle, he strives to empower youth and build strong Islamic identities through sport. Welcome back, Yusuf. Mashallah, it's going to be an amazing experience to see the insight that you'll provide on this particular topic of getting re-energized right after Ramadan. Now, for those who may not be familiar with Sister Zaina, one of the biggest things that I like to do is to dive into people's stories, like why get to where they are today. So Sister Zaina, out of all the possible career options, out of all the possible things that you could have decided to go into, you chose sports. You chose things in the medical field, or things related to science and the human body. Could you kindly enlighten us and share with us in a nutshell what drove you towards this, and especially talking about social development, policy to practice, like where did this all come from? And then we'll take the conversation from there.
Definitely. First of all, thank you for having me. And just a little background. I think me and Yusuf were in the same program, and I kind of struggled a lot in my undergrad because I didn't like anatomy. I didn't like physiology. Although I was good at it, I was really concerned with people. I was concerned with social issues, and I was concerned with how societies interact with one another, and how we can strive to do better as global societies. So I've managed to find a niche within what I was doing that focuses on, or kind of looks into studying how sport, physical activity, health, and communities can kind of work together to influence policy, and how knowledge or science can influence practice. So that's kind of how I found my niche. And I'm very interested in politics, so I really wanted to dig into how government policies, how whether provincial, federal level policies and programs influence the daily experiences and the day-to-day interactions of people, whether in Canada or globally. So a lot of my work is rooted in theoretical, but also people. So that's where I'm situated currently. That's what I do, and that's where my interests lie. And that's kind of how I went about, or how I started or delved into what I'm currently doing. And I'm really interested in how people engage with policy, how people engage with healthcare, sport, and all of these topics.
So it's like you're combining the best of both worlds, huh? You found that, and it's like not neither one nor the other. You kind of fuse them together. Mashallah, really cool. Yusuf, maybe for those who aren't aware, talk to us. How did you get involved with sports and, getting all involved with that? Talk to us.
Yeah, for sure. Jazakallah, and a pleasure to be here again. And Zaina, yeah, like Zaina alluded to, I studied with her, had the pleasure of studying with her, and my sports or my interest in sports goes back to my early childhood when I used to live in Innisfil. And I mentioned this in my first time on the show, but I grew up in a small town called Innisfil in a place called Alcona Glen. So very small town, not much to do. So for me to keep busy, my mother, she enrolled me in a lot of different sports. So volleyball, basketball, soccer. And I noticed I was a bit better in soccer. So that's what I stuck with. And I used to play a lot in the park and keep myself busy with sports. So when I realized I had a bit of a talent for soccer and I caught on too quickly, I started taking it to the next level and I joined the community team, which was like Innisfil House League, if you will. Quickly from Innisfil House League, I was scoring a lot of goals and I got selected to what they call a select team. I did well from there. Then I went into a rep team for the next city over because Innisfil didn't have a rep team. So I played for Barrie. And then, alhamdulillah, I did well in that league as well. And I eventually ended up playing for North Mississauga in a higher level. And then from there, I got selected to a university team. So that's kind of my pathway. I played a bit of volleyball in high school, but I love being around sports and those types of people and competing. So that's kind of how I got into sport.
Mashallah, healthy competition, right? Healthy We're not talking like the whole, you know how it can go. But mashallah, there you go. You start off with with humble beginnings, and here you are now. Now, I want to continue with you, Yusuf, because as I was talking in the beginning about how Ramadan, mashallah, it's upon us for every healthy Muslim who's able to fast, and although this is such a noble, act of worship that we're pursuing, it does take a toll on us, I can imagine. I mean, there's some days for me personally where I kind of like blanked out a bit. I'm like, what, like, you're losing your train of thought, etc., etc. So it does, you can see and you can imagine it takes its toll. But could you walk us through maybe some observations that you've had in terms of why are some people, or especially Muslims, particularly here in Ramadan, aside from the obvious that we don't have our food and drink, this lack of energy or this lack of care for activity? What have you noticed based on your experience, based on the youth or above?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And yeah, if I have to just kind of maybe pick one maybe main reason why there's a negligence towards physical activity. And there's a difference between physical activity and exercise, right? Exercise is a controlled means of physical activity, and your physical activity can be through your daily activities like walking to the masjid or carrying groceries, right? So when we're talking about exercise and this negligence towards exercise, a big kind of reason behind that, what I feel from the Muslim community, is just lack of knowledge around its benefits and its impact towards your overall health. Also, lack of exposure, and also, thirdly, lack of feeling safe and comfortable in getting out of your comfort zone. So sometimes, in order for different individuals in the Muslim community to get active, they need to step outside their comfort zone and mingle with communities that they're not used to mingling with, or going to certain settings where they don't feel comfortable. So maybe those are a few reasons why there's a negligence towards being physically active, and the low energy towards, or the low excitement towards towards exercise.
Interesting. So you were talking. What was the distinction you made again between exercise and just general movement? You said like what was it that you said? Like one was controlled and the other one,
Yeah.
what was that?
So there's one like your daily acts of living, essentially like walking, carrying groceries, anything like that you can imagine. Walking, out with your family, right? These are things that are not controlled or regimented. These are just your daily acts of living. So in those, you can do some like mechanical damage, some muscle damage, et cetera, and get your heart rate up. But it's not a controlled, organized means of exercising or exerting yourself. So exercise is a controlled means of essentially regimenting or structuring your activity to actually get a certain benefit that you're looking for, whether it be an increase of cardio or increase in muscle mass, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if Zaina wants to touch on any of those points. She did a bit better than me in physiology.
Yeah, but yeah, so Sister Zaina, if I can take it to you, do you like, what's your take on that? Like in terms of like what's going on in terms of like how the Muslim youth and particularly maybe within the Muslim communities, what's going on in terms of like how they view whether it's exercise or just general physical fitness? What would you say that you've noticed?
So, I'm talking pre-pandemic because post-pandemic or currently, there's different work or like there's different barriers that people are experiencing that are mainly rooted in mental health. So if I'm talking pre-pandemic, I do think, and it is rooted in research, that there are systemic barriers that prevent individuals from particular individuals, whether they're racialized, whether they identify as women, or individuals with different abilities. They face systemic barriers within institutions that focus on sport and fitness and physical activity, programs that don't cater to the diversity of Canadian youth, and also attitudes of people when individuals are engaging in physical activity and sport. So we can't negate or we can't ignore the significance of the microaggressions or the stares that individuals may get in spaces, or even literally lack of equipment and lack of programming that can support racialized people or racialized youth in sport. When it comes to the Muslim community, a lot of the issues that I've come across personally and within my own research is that the programming is not inclusive of Muslim women's or Muslim communities' needs. So, uniforms can be something that we can look into, because oftentimes they can be more on the revealing side, and that is not very inclusive with how we believe, modesty looks like. It can also include people's attitudes. People are not really used to seeing Muslim women, for example, or Muslim youth partaking in particular sports, whether it's, let's say, ice skating or ballet or soccer for women. So it's really about attitudes, and coupled with the systemic barriers and institutions, and that can change policies. So these are two things that I see. Now, when we're talking about the pandemic, I think a lot of it is rooted in mental health. I personally have been, like, my physical fitness has taken a toll in the past couple of months, because, when the pandemic first started, people were like really on this, doing physical activity and doing exercise at home, and people were like on board with that. But as the pandemic progressed, people's mental health, especially if you're working from home, I've been working from home for a year now, and we can't really ignore the importance of mental health when it comes to like social isolation. A huge part of sport and physical activity is the social component. So when you take that away, a lot of the motivation that is rooted, or a lot of the motivation that pushes people to participate in sport and physical activity, is again taken away. So, community is very important when we talk about sport and physical activity and fitness. And whether it's pre or currently, pre-pandemic and currently, we need to focus on, or we need to promote safe spaces and safe and inclusive spaces for communities that, want to participate in sport and physical activity, but don't feel comfortable doing so. So that's my 2 cents on the subject.
Interesting. Well, now, if I can kindly ask, like, based on the research that if we can maybe pinpoint particularly what's happening in terms of the systemic, or you're mentioning that there's some things that are probably built in. Can you give an example like that really illustrates a good portion of what you've found and what you've seen?
Absolutely. So something as simple as, well, it's not super simple, but a change that happened across Canadian universities in recent years is the inclusion of women's only hours in facilities on campus. So that's one thing that personally pushed me to start participating within or using the school's gym. And it's also rooted in, or participation levels have significantly increased for women when women's only hours on campus have been promoted. So it's not only about, providing spaces for Muslim women, it's also about providing spaces for women to participate in sport and physical activity, because, sport has been unfortunately rooted, or sport has unfortunately been male dominated. And when we think of, sports like soccer or basketball, we need to create spaces for women, all women, but also Muslim women, to feel space, because there are unfortunate incidents where women get harassed and women feel uncomfortable in particular spaces when it comes to sport and fitness. And we need to ensure that, the spaces that, if we want to promote physical activity and sport for women or for Muslim women or for youth, anyone who identifies as racialized, we have to look into the research and see how, something as simple, like I said, something as simple as providing women's only hours can boost participation for certain populations, because they feel that they can partake in a particular, or, participate in a facility or participate in a gym space more safely. So that's one example that I've come across in my work. And a lot of advocacy work is rooted in providing women's only spaces. And that's kind of what we have done with a lot of the programming at MAA, is that when we want to create women's, programs, we make sure that we are catering to women, because their needs are very different than, the general population. So that's an example that I can provide.
Okay, Masha, there you go. Yeah, I think that really paints a picture in terms of what's going on. I know Masha, Yusuf, and I, like, as brothers, we may not get the full picture, like, from what we can see. But Khair, it's wonderful to hear that you got to hear sides from everywhere, like, get shed light on different perspectives. Sometimes, maybe some things you take for granted, and then otherwise you realize, oh wow, there is different needs that need to be catered. It's not a one size fits all approach. But Yusuf, let me ask you, now with this whole pandemic situation, let's talk current. People want to talk about the here and now. People, gyms are pretty much closed. I mean, depending on where you are, there's really no room to pump some iron, et cetera, go on the field, and really just do what you can. Can you talk to us about maybe what are something, like, in this past, it's almost been a year or more now that, Masha, we've lived this life. Have you found anything really beneficial and useful that's worked for you indoors at your own, while you're enclosed in the four walls that you have? What are some things that you've done that really kept you going and kept the physical activity up?
Yeah, for sure. And Zaina, I just want to say, amazing points and some gems you dropped. And I think this type of panel is so important for us to get that holistic view of the systemic barriers that exist, and the balance and closing the gap between safety and inclusiveness and engagement. So I just wanted to say great job on those points. But to Maxwell's question, how do we stay physically active and motivated during the pandemic? I think it's, to be honest, first of all, I think we need to accept that it's tough. We can't act like it's not a tough situation and that things haven't changed. It's an uncertain time for all of us. So I think the first part is to accept that. Second part is to find an activity or an accountability buddy. So I have some friends that, we talk over text and we call each other, we hold each other accountable to meet certain goals in our physical activities. For example, like, I have an Apple Watch, and the Apple Watch will tell me how many kilometers I walked or how many kilometers I ran and at what pace I ran. So sometimes it's a matter of, like, I'll send this to my friend and going back to the healthy competition and saying, hey, I ran 7 kilometers today. How about you? Hey, I ran 8. Just that friendly, healthy competition with a friend can help keep you motivated. There's also a lot of technology now that's being released, such as like the Peloton and Zwift and other apps that you can download that are really engaging, really fun. If I could show you quickly, I just recently got into cycling.
Whoa.
So I bought an indoor cycle, which I never used to cycle before. And I purchased an app, and the app basically allows me to cycle virtually live with my friends and my colleagues from work. So it's a great way to stay active and to benefit from the social component of physical activity without seeing each other necessarily in person. So, that would be my thoughts on that.
Mashallah, and that's really cool. Like, can you show it again? Like, let's take a look again. Yeah, let's take a look. Hey, you could give ideas. There you go. Like, for people who are indoor cyclists, very nice. I wanna touch on this. I think this is a big. You both have touched on something. Like, you struck gold on this whole social isolation component. I want to take it to Sister Zaina for a moment, because you mentioned that mashallah, you've been working from home for over a year now, and it's taking its toll. It's definitely not the same as when you're in person. Now, what have you tried to do? Like, have you tried like that whole accountability aspect, like coming up with creative ways? Is it really that like challenging for people to get like what do you make of this particular portion?
Definitely. And I think when the pandemic first started, a lot of people were on the train of using, these YouTube videos they can do like at home workouts. And I was a part of that. I did at-home workouts for up until last summer. And then when the summer started and the weather started getting nicer, I started doing more outdoor stuff. And then MAA also did the running club for women. So I was a part of that as well. But then, closing it into the winter months, that's when it really started taking a toll on people's mental health. Sunlight is not there. You're just sitting in front of a screen for like 8-9 hours. You're doing work, you're talking to a screen. That social isolation was really emphasized during the winter months. And I tried to pick it up. I tried to pick it up in January and February, but I knew I knew that I wasn't where I wanted to be. And honestly, up to this point, I'm still a little bit behind on my workload because, and that's okay to recognize because we are in a pandemic. You know, you are not functioning. I'm not functioning in a way that I'm supposed to function. And that's what everyone has been feeling. You know, a lot of people have been feeling the Zoom burnout. So I'm a part of that group as well. So, you know, trying to stay physically active has been hard, but, you know, I do see as the summer months start to come in, you know, making use of the weather, cycling, running, making use of the outdoors is a big factor, and you know, kind of leaving that social isolation, that social bubble that we've created for ourselves during the winter months. And I think that's when I do think that, you know, during the winter months, you know, starting, you know, with school and work staying online, and the winter months, you know, closing in on us, a lot of people started to feel emotionally and socially burnt out, and you know, they're just not feeling it anymore. So I'm hoping that the summer, you know, during the summer, we make use of the weather and we start to transition out of the winter blues. But I do know that the winter blues, you know, had a huge impact on people's physical activity and physical fitness, you know, given the pandemic. So that's where I'm at.
Right. So now, I speaking of which, like about the whole in-home workouts, I think people. One of the things that I've seen is resistance bands. You know, like people instead of using weightlifting. Have you tried that, Yusuf? Like with resistance, have you heard of it or anything like that? That's, you know, aside from the cycling and the accountability, have you tried any other like at-home workouts or things of that nature that's really benefited you to stay active?
Yeah, at home, I have dabbled with the resistant bands, and I do support them. I think it's a great device, but I personally am not the biggest fan of them for my usage. But for me, I've been relying mostly on my bike. But for anybody, like, I just wanted to make a note that you can be active without really any device, with a matter of like standing up in your chair 10 times, whether it's walking just up and down your hallway and coming back, getting fresh air, going outside and coming back. I think just going back to Zaina's point, it really helps with the burnout, especially while we're working or studying from home. So just small things like that, just keep your heart rate up. Studies have shown to have an effect on your overall health, right? And your depression levels, and mitigating that and your anxiety and overall burnout. So I'll just advise, yeah, small little things that you can do consistently goes a long way.
Sister Zaina, if I can ask you, based on your research, have you noticed anything about excessive amounts of sitting, like time for sitting? Like, I don't know if we're built to sit a lot, and now, mashallah, we really, really like took it to the max, like in terms of like the amount of time that we're sitting. Have you come across anything of that nature where we're like, you know, sedentary and just kind of like, and does that have a relationship with mental health? Maybe that could, you know, unlock some insight as to what we could do to kind of keep getting energized after Ramadan. So have you come across anything like that?
No, absolutely. And sedentary behavior is linked to so many chronic illnesses, whether it's, you know, diabetes, hypertension, any of the heart problems that are well known in society. So, you know, sedentary behavior is also linked to mental health. And obviously with the pandemic, sitting in front of a screen for a couple hours, not even a couple of hours, for like the majority of your day, not getting that sunlight, you know, it really does take a toll on your physical and your mental health. A lot of issues that occur from sedentary behavior are, you know, issues concerned with your back, issues concerned with your knees, your joint pain is linked to that lack of movement that is, you know, that is associated with sedentary attitudes throughout the day. So, me personally, I've been, you know, having to sit in front of a screen. I knew that my back would take a toll, so I invested in a good chair. But it's important to know, a lot of people have been also investing in standing desks. That's something that I've come across as well. So there are alternatives and innovative ways to, you know, make sure that you're taking care of your health as much as you can when dealing with the pandemic and working from home. But it has been rough on a lot of people, whether it's, you know, your psychological or your physical health. Is just try to make sure, I'm like, the way that I would tell myself every day is to, you know, just take it one day at a time. I know it's like, it seems like it's never ending, but it's important to kind of keep yourself mentally sane. Tell yourself, you know, it's going to pass, you know, reaffirming yourself with positive thoughts to get you through the day, but also do get up and move, like walk around your neighborhood, you know, especially with parents, the issue that a lot of issues that we see is that, we get it. We get that physical activity and fitness is important, but there is that generational gap. And it becomes frustrating to try to get your parents or your grandparents involved in physical activity, because their understanding of physical activity is that you have to do this, extraneous physical activity, whether you're running, jumping, and it's not the case. A lot of times it's just walking around the neighborhood or going up and down the stairs, like Yusuf said. So, changing our understanding of what physical activity entails really helps with getting that, taking that first step into moving and being physically active. So I think Yusuf wants to add a point, so I'll just let him take it from there.
Wow, I like that you talked about the parent. This is as you were saying it, I was thinking, believe you me, I was thinking about this whole. I mean, Yusuf, imagine you're doing jumping jacks in the living room, Baba, let's do that. What's happening, and they're looking at you, and they're, again, we all respect the mothers, the fathers. They have their place, and mashallah, their places cannot be understated. But talk to me, Yusuf. Is it frustrating? Let's just say are the Muslim youth today, they kind of get it, they understand the impact of exercise, but then if they see their own, their mom, their dad, their parent, their guardian, and they're just sitting on the couch, or they're not as moving, or they're not really that juiced up about this whole thing, does that have an impact on this whole situation? There's another dimension. What would you say about the whole relationship now between the youth and the parents, and how they look at exercise or physical activity?
That's an amazing topic of conversation. I will take it to pre-COVID, that my friend circle or my social circle was predominantly my friends. So usually I'd eat out with them, and I'd go out with them to eat, and I'd grab a coffee and go for a walk with them. Now my social circle is my brother and my two parents. So I really look to them to keep me entertained, if you will, for lack of a better terms. So I'm always asking my mom and my dad, let's go for a walk. And I don't get the same response as I would from my friends, which sometimes discourages me. But I have to be also understanding of their situation. Just going back to Zaina's point, my father's working from home, for example, and sitting from home and sitting for prolonged periods of time does have an impact on your neck and your back. And I actually did research on this, that essentially that neck pain and that back pain can exacerbate your depression, and your depression can exacerbate your neck and back pain symptoms. So once you get into this vicious cycle, 1 in 3 Canadians will experience neck and back pain. So my dad being one of them, for example. So we also have to be sensitive to their circumstance, and that they've been sitting for long periods of time, not just through COVID, but their whole careers. So it's hard to kind of get over that vicious cycle to really have the motivation to get up and exercise, especially during a work day. So for someone like a youth who wants to be active and to navigate through that environment, and parents who may not be as energetic or optimistic towards working out as you, is sometimes difficult, but needs to be worked around.
We got to unpack that, Yusuf. You can't leave it at that, man. We got to unpack that a bit more.
Yeah, sure.
Talk to us, man. What do we do? So, there's tension. So, okay, mom, let's go work out. No, I don't want to do it. Okay, now there's this friction. It's not the same as if everybody is coming together and, all right, let's do it. Let's have a nice big group walk, or let's go do 20 jumping jacks, or you got your dad telling you, okay, drop and give me 20, right? So what do you do in this case? Sister Zaina, please, if you can jump in as well. So Yusuf, do you have any solutions so far, how you're navigating through this? And then Sister Zaina, how do you take it?
Yeah, and to be blunt, I don't think my parents are on the call, but they have gained weight over the course of the pandemic, and it's due to the lack of physical activity, of course, and lack of exercise, and that just got worse over the pandemic. So throughout the period of time, I just try my best to take baby steps with them, whether it be let's just sit down, stand up and down on the couch, just get used to having your heart rate up. Sometimes when you haven't exercised in a long while, getting your heart rate up and increasing your heart rate sometimes scares parents, and it makes them really uncomfortable. Their blood starts to pump, and that they're not comfortable in that feeling. So we want to make their transition to, inshallah, getting more physically active a smooth one. So I would just suggest taking baby steps, and a specific one would be, while they're sitting down, just have them sit up and down 10 times, and you're essentially performing a squat, which is a full body exercise. So eventually performing a squat once, and then eventually, let's have a walk after iftar, let's have a walk after our coffee, or let's take our coffee and go for a walk, and just try to kind of link what they're already doing to something that can be bit more physically engaging.
All right, let's take it to Sister Zaina. Talk to us, please, and thank you. What would you say? Anything?
Yeah, I think that ties back to the social element. I think when you take away the social component and how people rely on socialization to get stuff done, whether it's walking with a friend or talking to your mom while you're on a walk, socializing is and I believe it's central to, the physical activity or the fitness session, because you don't feel time when you're talking. You're more distracted with the conversation rather, what you can and can't do when you're physically active or when you're, doing whatever, whether it's cycling or running or walking. So the way that I've navigated that is, making sure that I'm being extra communicative with my parents. Like, let's go on a walk and let's talk about this, or let's talk about what's currently happening. Or, like, really centering socialization back into the session, I think promotes physical activity because, especially with the pandemic, you are dealing with social isolation over a long period of time. People are yearning to talk. They're yearning to have conversations with friends. So I've seen a lot of, socially distant walking or, meeting up with friends at a park and doing a group exercise session that's, spread apart. Really tying in socialization, especially with parents, is something that I do believe boosts physical activity. I do that with my mom. Before I thought, like by an hour, we were like, hey, let's go for a walk, and we take that as an opportunity to catch up on each other's lives and what we have planned and what we're thinking about, getting to know each other. And I like that becomes a kind of like an opportunity for you to bond with your parents again. So that's what I've been doing. And I do urge people, if you find that your parents or the elders in your family are a little more hesitant when it comes to being physically active, change their perceptions of physical activity. You don't have to go on a 5-mile run. You don't have to jump rope for like 25 minutes. You can easily just go on a walk with me. We can get to know each other, me as your, the youth in your family, get to know each other, kind of bridging the gap between generational understandings and values. So that's how I would navigate it. And I do find that it would be helpful to do that.
Mashallah, there you go. It's a classic, walk around the block and you just talk. I mean, it's really, it's odd, to say that this is something that's revolutionary or this is something that really, I mean, you're just walking around with your mom or dad or what have you, the elders in your family. But it really works wonders, like baby steps, like Yusuf said. Now, let's take it to you, Yusuf, if I can kindly ask, like, are there any, I know, Masha, you touched on a couple of things here, but maybe just to kind of unpack it a bit more, any sort of resources that you could say have been really tremendously helpful for you or, your family throughout this whole pandemic, especially now within being indoors? Is there maybe, for example, like, is there a YouTube channel that you follow? Is there an article? You mentioned that you read an article that linked between, what was it, neck pain and back pain and that, vicious cycle of depression. Has there been any other resources that you could point towards that say, yeah, this has been really tremendously helpful and in understanding and navigating to kind of keep us going and not neglect or abandon the whole physical components of our lives?
Quite honestly, I don't have a recommendation for a specific resource that I follow. I kind of like to dip and choose from a multitude of different personnel, but yeah, most of my findings just on YouTube. I like men's health articles for myself. That's what I follow. But in terms of families and stuff like that, I don't really have a resource that I lean on. I don't know if Zaina maybe has one.
No, I'm sure. Yeah, actually, now that you mentioned men's health, this is another kind of caveat. If you allow me, Sister Zaina, I'll come to you about this whole resources, because here's another thing. We at the very beginning of this whole conversation, mashallah, we talked about especially our sisters and how that there's this whole need for inclusivity, or at least being more sensitive, at least to the certain catering to the needs of the sisters, women only hour, the type of uniforms, et cetera, et cetera. From a guy's perspective, for the boys that are watching this, is there any difference though, like in terms of what the guys go through? Are there, Is there like this whole mental health barrier? Is there this whole macho fiasco or whatever, man? Is there, what would you say? Have you noticed anything like that for the boys like this, just so that, you know, people are looking and they're like, oh, what about us? Right. So what would you say? Is there anything that you've noticed, any trends, observations in terms of how guys look at their own physical fitness?
Yeah, and maybe some barriers around that, Maxwell. Yeah, for sure. I think it's really tough within the, let's call it like male men's sport category, because the levels are very distinguished. And what I mean by that is, like, if you want to compete in a high level of sport or a competitive level of sport, it's usually very competitive and usually associated with like almost a vicious type of mentality where like it's win all in or nothing kind of mentality, which is not always suitable for someone who's looking to have fun but also play at a good level. So a lot of I find a lot of men and sometimes young boys, they find themselves hesitant to participate because maybe they feel insecure, maybe they are not confident in their abilities as an athlete to play at that level, to play at organized sports. I've also seen they're very vocal. Men are very vocal. If they don't want you on their team or they don't feel like you're should be playing with us, I've seen a lot of times men will vocalize that and say, you know, you're not good enough to be here kind of thing, or you shouldn't be here, or you should go play house league, or whatever the case may be, which is obviously very discouraging. So there's maybe that macho kind of superiority complex that sometimes takes place, which is a psychosocial barrier maybe for men that I've seen quite predominantly.
Interesting. So this whole dog eat dog world, that whole kind of mentality, I didn't realize. Yeah, man, it's been a while. It's probably like for me, like to see, like, you know, how it gets all, it can get you know, get out of hand very fast, and I can see that. So I guess it's not just, so yeah, when you mention the guys have their own insecurities, that's one case as well to keep in mind. But I'll take it to you, Sister Zaina, if I may kindly ask, like, is there any sort of resources or other things, mashallah, full of research, and I'm sure that you have plenty of things that you could point towards, if I may. Is there anything that you could find, like, or humbly recommend as things, you know, for folks to really kind of to be in tune with their own physical fitness, things that could be really tremendously helpful for them? What would you suggest? Are there any maybe articles, videos, websites? I know mashallah Muslim Athletic Association is there. So what would you say? Is there anything that you could point towards that really would help?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I don't want to focus a lot on I mean, if I were to provide research or academic-based resources, I think it would be a lot difficult for people, more difficult for people to understand. So, because that's usually what happens when, you know, the translation of academic journals and academic language into, you know, general information. But a lot of organizations that I've worked with are doing that work. So, if you are curious about learning more about, you know, the barriers or the participation opportunities for women and girls in sport across Canada, you can visit the E-Alliance website. It is focused, you know, primarily on studying gender equity and barriers when it comes to participation in sport. You can also check out Canadian Women in Sport. They have a lot of resources and opportunities. Another organization that's popping in my head is called I think it's called Fast and Female. And I have a friend that works there. So there are a lot of organizations that are doing work on the ground. They're creating programs that cater to the different populations in Canada. And they do a really good job at translating that research to practice, or like translating research to practice and making it known that these are the barriers, but these are how we're addressing them. And this is what you can do at home, but this is also what you can do with family and friends. So these are 3 organizations that just popped into my head, but I'd be happy to connect with people or folks who are curious about more, or who are curious about learning more about, you know, this specific field. And if they're interested in academic research and resources, I can happily provide that. But, you know, for a general perspective, these organizations are really good start.
Mashallah, wonderful. So what was the E-Alliance? E-Alliance is one. And what was the second one and the third?
The second one is the Canadian Women in Sport. The third one is Fast and Female.
Wonderful, mashallah. So plenty of options there, you know, for our sisters and for the women who are looking to kind of broaden their horizons and see what's out there. Because I think maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, Sister Zaina, but maybe a lot of people, particularly a lot of women, they may feel like there's like very limited options, and they're like, oh, okay, so it's almost like a self-defeating prophecy. What's the point if there's nothing out there? And if there's nothing out there, why bother? And then, but if you know that there are some things out there that are like some organizations who cater to this, or at least address certain things, this would provide encouragement, no?
Absolutely. And I think I want to take this opportunity to highlight Muslim-led organizations that are focused on women's sports. So if you know Hijabi Ballers, they're doing amazing work. They've connected with so many athletic figures across the world, and they are partnering with a lot of amazing people to bring initiatives that focus on Muslim women. There's also a lot of work that's being done out of ISNA, so the ISNA Mosque. They have women's leagues for basketball, for softball. There are plenty, and MEA. That's a shout out as well. They are doing a lot of work that is focused on, Muslim women in sport, girls and women in sport. So making sure that not only are we checking off the box of women and girls, but we're also checking off the box that's cultural. So, focusing on Islam, focusing on how we can be better athletes or be better participants in sport using our religion as a vehicle to do that. So, it's really important, given that these two kind of markers are known barriers. It's important that we highlight organizations that are doing work to target both women's participation, but also Muslim women's participation in sport. So, yeah.
There you go. Very cool. I believe like MAA also did. They recently, or is still going, about the whole yoga. Is it still going, or is it done? Or like, if anybody wanted to check it out, like the sisters only yoga. Want to fill me in, Yusuf, or sisters only?
Oh yeah, we'll start back like from the running club was our initial program that we ran during COVID, and it was quite successful. Like we had, I think this is when the restrictions were a little bit easier on us. We had about, I think it was maximum 10 participants, and we were running outside together. Now we transitioned to a yoga program, which alhamdulillah had over 200 registrants. And then we had most recently Ramadan wellness program, which is a holistic program, which Zaina was heavily involved with, and she can maybe speak on a little bit more, but had yoga. It also had physical fitness sessions, and it also had some mental health, some nutrition, webinars. And Zaina, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah. So the Ramadan Wellness Program was focused primarily for women and girls who wanted to be more physically active in Ramadan. Obviously, we identify the issues that, being physically active in general is hard, but in Ramadan is like twice as hard because people just don't think they can do the things that, it requires for physical activity. But we partnered with an amazing fitness instructor. Her name's Carly. I do want to give her a shout out. And she ran through, 2 sessions a week throughout the entire duration of Ramadan. And we had consistent participants who, showed up and said, hey, we actually have never done this before, but, given the clear instructions that we're being given and the intensity that we're working at, this is really effective and we love what we're doing. So, it's helping debunk myths around physical activity and fitness in Ramadan. And that program did that really well. So I am proud of that in that sense. But a lot of programs, and inshallah in the future, we will have more, or MAA will have more programs for women, but the Ramadan program was focused on nutrition for women, fitness for women, especially during Ramadan, how to navigate these things. But it was a success, alhamdulillah.
Wonderful. I mean, Alfonso, put barakah and, keep it growing, keep it going. MashaAllah, wonderful stuff. And, I hate to say this, but all good things must come to an end. But I think our whole, our viewers, myself included, would be remiss if we didn't provide that, that final opportunity for parting words of gems of wisdom. Let's take it, ladies first, Sister Zaina. Let's say there's a sister who's watching this right now, and she's feeling socially isolated. She's on Zoom burnout, and her neck is killing her, and her, back is like really just bent out of shape, and she just doesn't see it just doesn't work out. Like, I don't know what, like, it just is overall, it just doesn't, things are not looking so great for her. So if you could provide one piece of advice for her to get back on track, like to kind of take control of her own mental well-being and her physical well-being, what advice would you give?
Absolutely. I think step number 1 is to take it easy on yourself, because we are in a pandemic. We are not supposed to be functioning in the way that we are functioning, but we're excelling at amazing lengths. So take it easy on yourself, because that's what I tell myself. But also take it step by step. I would really urge people to like make use of socialization, or like talking to a friend, obviously remaining safe and socially distanced, or on phone, but really making sure that you are re-engaged, or you are engaging with friends and family and communicating your concerns, because we're all in this together. And what you may be feeling is not you alone. A lot of people are feeling this, so just take it easy on yourself, but also make sure to reach out to people, make sure to engage in light work if that's what you're looking to do. And just taking care of your mental health will inshallah lead to taking care of your physical health, but do take it easy on yourself.
Mashallah, take it easy on yourself. All right, I'll take it to you, Yusuf. Man, there's some brothers very insecure, maybe. Like they're looking, they want to play on the court, they want to do their thing, but then they look in the mirror and they're like, man, I'm not looking too great, and just demoralizes them, and they're saying to themselves that, oof. Now with Ramadan over, yeah, I can stuff myself, but I'm getting this biryani belly going. So what would you say, Yusuf, man, if there's some piece of advice, some gems of wisdom, what would you say to kind of get that brother back on track, man, so that way he can get excited about his own life and that he can take control of his own physical fitness and have those activity levels so that he can be re-energized right after Ramadan?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, Jazakallah for having myself on the call, and Zaina. It's been an honor and a pleasure. But just I want to echo what Zaina said, but I also want to make an addition, is that take it easy on yourself, but also push yourself a little bit, but push yourself for the sake of Allah. What I mean by that is the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who's supposed to be our role model, his stomach never protruded his chest throughout his years. So we should take this seriously, is that he was a fit person. He was a healthy man, healthy individual. And this goes for both women and females, that our bodies have rights over us. So we need to take care of this body. It's an amana. It's a trust from Allah that He gave us. And this is a blessing from Allah that we need to take care of. So if we're going to take this religion seriously and wanting to get closer to Allah, we need to factor in the physical activity and the health component within our daily lives, and to form good habits. And just to echo what Zaina said, form these good habits by injecting socialization, by having people around you, whether it be family, friends, or a combination of both, that help promote yourself to be active. So form good habits, extend a hand to people who need help, and don't be shy to reach out for help. I'm here to support you and other people alike. And Maxwell, please leave my email or my number linked somewhere. And anybody who has any questions or comments can please reach out to myself, and I'd be happy to help, inshallah.
MashaAllah, with that, oh man, like with that invitation, Jazakallah khairan, brother Yusuf, sister Zaina, it's been an honor. It's been wonderful having you both. And we talked a lot. We talked theory, we talked practicality, we got the whole balance. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all the work, the amazing work that both of you are doing to push this community forward. And again, Eid Mubarak to you both if I don't see you, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all our efforts during Ramadan. And it's wonderful to have you both, and inshallah all the best to onwards and upwards to our physical fitness. Now I want to talk to the viewers for a moment here. We got to wrap it up with this conversation about physical fitness. Now I get it. I understand 100,000% that when it comes to exercise, when it comes to physical fitness, when it comes to taking care of your body, it's a lot of work. If anyone was to say that it's easy, that's not true. You want to, the best things are the ones that you got to work for. As they say, easy come, easy go, right? So if we kind of be lackluster in our diet, we're not consistent with that, it's not going to end well. So why am I saying all this? Is it to discourage you? Is it to, run away and to say, oh, it's too, when you look in the mirror, you say to yourself, you truly are worth it. And just as mashallah, what Yusuf said at the end, being, taking care of our body is part of this deen. It's not something separate. We're not separating our heads from our bodies. It's not just our heads are up here and our bodies are whatever. No, man, at the end of the day, it's all integrated. At the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to hold us accountable. These hands will testify against us. The nose is going to testify against us or for us, And so it's what you do with it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with this gift. What are you going to make with this gift? What are you going to do with this gift of life and this whole physical fitness? So it's baby steps. No one's, and you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised at how far you reached. And with that, as always, again, Eid Mubarak to y'all if you're going to see this down the line. But we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept all our efforts, accept all our good deeds, provide an endless source of barakah beyond. It's wonderful having you. This is Brother Muhammad Maxwell Hassan. Tune in every Wednesday, Muslim Network TV, Canada Today Youth Edition, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Stay strong, stay safe, and stay proud to be Muslims. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.